Merci Boris. Merci à tous d'être ici aujourd'hui. Thank you everyone for being here today. This may be a bit of a surprise. I think there was a lot of speculation over the past couple of hours, but I am actually here to announce my resignation as Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Canada for personal reasons. It's been the honor of a lifetime to serve alongside Elizabeth May and Mike Morris, two outstanding members of Parliament who dedicate their every waking hours to Canadians in a way that sadly partisan politics today in Ottawa doesn't quite exemplify. I think when I decided to come back to this country after 14 years in conflict areas, working to advance the cause of peace and human rights, it was very clear to me that this country was on a pathway that is fairly dangerous. Il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on prend pour acquis dans ce pays. There's a lot of things we take for granted in this country. My departure today is for personal reasons. I won't be providing further comments on that, but I do want to say that Greens throughout the country continue to exemplify what politics should be about: collaboration, hard work, and most importantly, a commitment to this country and its citizens, something that I think other parties could very well learn from. Je suis ici pour annoncer aujourd'hui ma démission en tant que chef adjoint du Parti vert du Canada. Ça a été l'honneur d'une vie de servir aux côtés d'Elizabeth May puis de Mike Morris, deux députés extraordinaires qui dédient chaque heure de leur jour et de leur journée pour servir leurs concitoyens. Quelque chose que je crois que bien d'autres politiciens pourraient prendre exemple sur Elizabeth et Mike. Ça a été une expérience extraordinaire de pouvoir servir à leur côté. Quand je suis revenu au Canada après 14 ans en zone de conflit pour servir comme chef adjoint, c'était pour moi important de rappeler aux Canadiens qu'on est dans un moment assez extraordinaire sur la scène internationale et domestiquement. On est en route vers des tendances qui sont dangereuses et difficiles. Je pense que ça va être important que les progressistes d'un océan à l'autre s'unissent et qu'on fasse front face à la montée, malheureusement, des extrêmes. La décision que je prends aujourd'hui, elle est personnelle. Je ne ferai pas plus de commentaires sur cette décision. Et sur ce, je vais passer la parole à notre chef, Elizabeth May.
Et pour la dernière fois, je veux dire grand merci publiquement à mon chef adjoint, mon cher ami Jonathan Pedneault. Il a dit que c'est un honneur de travailler avec moi. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de travailler avec lui. Jonathan Pedneault is an extraordinary young man with depth, courage, and integrity, and approach to this decision, as he said, for personal reasons, and I'll respect that they are his reasons. And that I am disappointed, to put it mildly, to lose his role in a shared leadership effort. I remain committed to the path that the Green Party is on internally for constitutional reform, to constitutionally address the issue of co-leadership and why it is a preferable course. I reflected on this as I watched my friends and as the leadership of the Greens of England and Wales finally make a breakthrough from the one seat that Carolyn Lucas had won back in 2010 in Brighton Pavilion to 4 seats with the kind of coverage in The Guardian that crisscrossing the country as a duo. They covered so much ground that Carla has just won her seat in Bristol. First time the Greens have won there. It was traditionally a strong Labour seat. Adrian Ramsey's run a seat. On the other hand, in rural and very hardcore Conservative territory. So 4 seats in England and Wales. I remain confident that the Greens in Canada offer the voters something that they want, which is an authentic voice with real integrity on the national stage. Leadership questions are besetting, I think, parties around the world. And just as Jonathan said, we're in a situation where the rise of some kinds of leaders, populist, the changes that we've seen in jettisoning the status quo is the one common denominator. You can't say there's a rise of right-wing politics when the UK just went to Labour. On the other hand, you can say there's a disgust with the status quo wherever you are. Macron certainly did not receive public support. The ability of Greens in France to ally with parties that are traditionally enemies to make sure we run a lot of Green seats for Green candidates in France in the last election, as part of a combined effort to deny the hard right in France any chance of forming majority government. Around the world, there are leadership questions. There are leadership questions in Canada. There are leadership questions, certainly, in the United States. For Greens in Canada, there remain questions about the structure and internal governance for the party that will be addressed. So make that clear. The special general meeting that was postponed recently will be taking place. We will be addressing issues of co-leadership. That doesn't drop, even though I'm heartbroken that my partner with whom I entered the leadership race 2 years ago, and I remain leader of the Green Party of Canada. That's the official title I have, even though Jonathan and I were, and I remain committed to the concept of co-leadership, and in fact, finding another co-leader before the next election campaign, assuming that the steps that are before us are taken. It's always in the hands of the members of the Green Party of Canada what amendments are made, what structure is put in place. Anyway, there's no point in saying more now, just to say that Jonathan's decision is his decision. I respect him. I love him. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, a better sounding board, a better voice for so many core issues that face Canadian society, particularly issues of inequality, income distribution, the assets of corporate power in Canada that have, what have they? Doubled in 10 years?
10 years.
It's an incredible reality that we don't talk about in this country, is that we've become a more unequal society, a more unfair society. And we remain committed as Greens to justice, to fairness, to climate action. Those are all givens. And in some ways, this press conference announces very few changes. But that doesn't mean I'm not heartbroken that Jonathan is resigning his position as my deputy leader. To be super clear, our other deputy leader, Rainbow Eyes, who's appealing a conviction for opposing the destruction of old-growth forests and stands sentenced for 51 days in jail while her appeal continues, she has our full support and she remains deputy leader. I think that covers off all possibilities of what might be hypothetically changing. I'm running for Parliament in Sandwich Gulf Islands, and I really will be as committed as ever to making sure that our party is ready for the election whenever it happens. Thank you.
Merci, thank you. We'll now proceed to the question period. Let's start with Jesse from the Hill Times.
Yes. So do you have anything you'd like to say about accomplishments or regrets now that you'll be stepping down?
I think Elizabeth and I took over a party that was in a difficult spot, whether it's in terms of fundraising, in terms of public image, and we've worked very hard with our membership to stabilize the party after what has been undoubtedly a pretty difficult time for all Greens. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the work that Elizabeth and Mike have continued to do in the House of Commons, defending the interests of their constituents. Elizabeth, of course, has passed her third private member's bill. Mike Morris has been one of the most vocal advocates on defending people with disabilities and calling for a Canada disability benefit, something that sadly we're sad to see not being fully funded. So in many ways, I think that the work of Greens in Parliament has been exemplary. Elizabeth and I have been touring the country, meeting with Greens, rebuilding one step at a time, or as Elizabeth likes to say, one hug at a time. It's hard work, and it's work that I'm very proud to have accomplished over the past year and a half alongside Elizabeth.
Follow-up, Jessie? No. Mylène Crête, La Presse.
Oui, bonjour. Je vais savoir, Madame B, est-ce que le Parti vert, c'est le parti d'une seule femme, vous?
Je suis exactement le seul chef qui est aussi une femme. Et il reste le même depuis les années. C'est bizarre que j'ai devenu chef de Parti vert la première fois en 2006. Et pendant tout le temps, je reste la seule chef qui était une femme. Je le trouve extraordinaire, toujours, qu'il n'y ait pas un seul autre chef qui était aussi féministe, une femme. C'est bizarre. Mais nous sommes un parti en faveur des droits des femmes, évidemment, et je suis fière de notre bilan comme un parti qui fait toujours l'effort de protéger les droits des femmes ici au Canada.
Mais si je peux ajouter, Mme Crête, ce parti, d'abord et avant tout, c'est un parti de membres. C'est un parti qui n'existe pas sans un membership qui est fort, qui est un peu partout à travers le pays, qui s'active, qui fait... Être vert au Canada, c'est pas une job facile. Hein? Si on veut la voie facile, on s'en va chez les libéraux, les néo-démocrates. Être vert, c'est un acte de courage à chaque jour. C'est un acte de courage que des milliers de personnes à travers le pays démontrent à chaque jour en étant actifs et présents dans les activités du parti. Des activités, puis un parti sans lequel Elizabeth May puis Mike Morris ne seraient pas capables de faire le travail qu'ils sont présentement en train de faire. Donc, ce n'est absolument pas le parti d'une femme ou d'une seule personne, mais je tiens quand même à noter que Elizabeth May est la seule femme chef d'un parti politique fédéral. Oui. Et ça, on peut poser la question après ça à nos collègues libéraux puis néo-démocrates. Comment ça se fait qu'en 2024, on n'ait pas plus de leadership féminin dans ce pays?
Oui, et je peux dire aussi que nous sommes aussi un mouvement mondial et aussi national. Les chefs des partis verts partout dans notre pays, c'est la chef du Parti vert de Colombie-Britannique. Ce n'est pas un parti d'une femme, mais c'est vrai que Sonia Furstenau, comme chef du Parti vert de Colombie-Britannique, reste la seule femme qui était aussi une chef. Mais en Ontario, c'est Mike Schreiner, puis aussi en Nouveau-Brunswick, c'est David Kuhn. Et ce n'est pas nécessairement une partie, c'est jamais une seule personne, comme Jonathan a dit. Nous avons les membres, puis aussi les candidats, puis le cabinet fantôme. Le Parti vert n'est jamais une seule personne. Et c'est pour ça que je préfère le système de co-leadership, parce qu'il reste plus clair avec l'effort d'avoir une transparence vers l'idée de nous comme Verts, partage le travail.
Mais en même temps, ce co-leadership-là semble pas être vraiment accepté par les membres du Parti vert, là, de ce que je comprends.
Nous n'avons pas une idée parce que nous n'avons pas, à ce moment, un vote. Nous n'avons pas l'occasion pour... Et c'est seulement par hasard les circonstances. Chaque fois où nous avons fait une décision d'un délai pour la question claire pour les membres de faire un vote. Mais il reste aussi tellement clair que nous avons eu une course à la chefferie il y a 2 ans. Et dans la course à la chefferie, il y a presque, oui, c'est 88% des membres qui ont voté en faveur des candidats dans une équipe en faveur de co-leadership. Et je pense que à le moment quand nous avons un vote, j'espère qu'en l'automne, avec une rencontre des membres, ils vont voter en faveur. Mais il reste pour moi l'évidence de mon chefferie, c'est toujours avec l'idée de co-chefferie.
David Aiken, Global News.
Good morning, Jonathan. It's very good news. Question for Elizabeth, and then maybe a follow-up for both of you. So may I assume then, you said you're going to run in Saint-Michel Islands. Will you be presenting yourself as well as the leader, a co-leader for the party? And is there a commitment for the Greens to run candidates in all 343 ridings next time around?
Great question. Look, I would be much happier. I'm not going to pretend I'm not unhappy with the news that Jonathan has taken, the decision he's taken, but I respect him, and that's his decision. I have a strong commitment that, and again, we're a party run by our members. So the way in which I'm presented right now, I'm leader of the party and wanting to work towards co-leadership. Set that aside. Absolutely committed, as is our team, to running candidates in every riding.
Okay, great. So the follow-up is this. If we look at every poll on values, openness to work on climate change, openness to be green, Quebec is the greenest of all the provinces, greener than BC. Quebecers across the political spectrum want their governments to take action on climate change. And I know that was one of Jonathan's sort of raison d'etres, is to establish green momentum in Quebec. And I'm not sure I see much if I look at polls. So I wonder if both of you might reflect on how do Greens pick it up in this green province?
C'est une bonne question. Pour moi, c'est clair que, comme vous avez dit, c'est le... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Look, okay, it's very clear. You're absolutely right. We would say, en français, c'est la province le plus écolo. Voters in Quebec, like voters in British Columbia, are, based on polling, more preoccupied about the climate crisis, wondering when are people waking up to heat domes, like canicule. I mean, what we're experiencing is way outside of what we could call normal. We have left normal. We left normal a long time ago because of human activity, specifically because of burning fossil fuels. So Jonathan did better, speaking of accomplishments, I almost jumped in on Jesse's question, but Jonathan is in the by-election in Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Westmount, did better than any Green candidate has ever done in a Quebec riding. I agree that we need to find ways and to get our message to Quebecers to elect Greens in Quebec. I think we will. It's fertile ground for Greens, and we continue to be looking at an election campaign strategy to finally make that breakthrough, because we are the voice that a lot of Quebec voters are looking for.
Do you want
You
to
wanna add?
français ou, in English? Well, I don't have much to add to what Elizabeth has said. I think you're perfectly right. Quebecers have been ahead of the curve in many ways in terms of climate action. It's a fundamentally progressive province. It's an important voice in the federation, and one that I think needs to be heard a bit more when it comes to the challenges that we face collectively as a federation at the moment. Now, when it comes to the Green Party, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities for Greens in Quebec. I've been saying that all along, and the party will be working in that direction, I'm sure, under Elizabeth's leadership, and hopefully with a lot of the good Greens that we've been able to recruit in Quebec.
I should mention our candidate, unlike the Liberals, we have a nominated candidate in La Salle Marverdon. Her name is Jancy Mercier. She's been a member of Shadow Cabinet. She's run with us before. She's very dedicated, tellement engagée en faveur des questions, des enjeux clés pour les Québécois et Québécoises. Et je pense que elle est une candidate fantastique. Alors, c'est tellement difficile avec les nouvelles quotidiennes, c'est les nouvelles des libéraux, des conservateurs, des NPD, et les Verts sont invisibles. That's a problem we face, and we have to figure it out. It's not on anyone else but us to figure out how to make sure that when we're looking at election campaigns and by-election campaigns, that our role and our work is recognized. Jonathan gave a fantastic speech not long ago for the Acadian population of New Brunswick. They're heading into an election this fall, and Nouveau-Brunswick est vraiment une province bilingue. We have a lot of Acadian voters in New Brunswick who share a lot of the concerns of Quebecers, particularly about language and culture. I think we have more of a breakthrough in New Brunswick, for sure. I mean, we have an elected caucus in New Brunswick, and it will grow in the fall election. So we just have to continue. And losing Jonathan is I would not pretend that I have the same Quebec strategy this morning that I had last week.
Mike Ramsey, Toronto Star.
Thank you for taking my questions. I'm wondering if you know, there was a lot of internal debate about co-leadership. There was some pushback among some members. Could both of you please reflect on that, if there's any lessons learned from it? And Mr. Pedneault, if you could please speak to what role, if any, that has had in your decision to step down.
Thanks for the question. I'm stepping down for personal reasons. There's a lot that can be said about our internal workings. We're a grassroots party. I know the Toronto Star loves to call members and ask questions and difficult questions to our members. So I'm sure you're probably better informed than I am in many ways. But this comes with politics. Politics is bringing people with sometimes diverging opinions together in a room and having those discussions. And I think that's one of the things that sets the Greens apart. We try as much as possible to work by consensus, you know, I think it's something that everyone in Parliament could learn from.
Actually, I would not say we've experienced pushback at all on co-leadership, at all. We've experienced delays. My own timeline would have been more aggressive from the moment when the leadership race ended to move ahead, as we had put in our shared platform to our membership, that we would move at our first opportunity to put forward a motion at a general meeting to change our constitution to allow for co-leadership. We've had a lot of member engagement sessions, which we've been honored to have participation of the former co-leader of the Greens of England and Wales, Carolyn Lucas, taking questions from our members. We've had questions put to other German Greens, Scottish Greens. I won't go into all the details, just to say, I don't hear pushback. It's a party where the members are really in charge. Members have questions, but nobody has ever suggested that we won't get support for the motion to move to co-leadership. As I said, 88% of our members in the leadership race, there were 2 teams running as co-leaders and 2 individuals running as solo leaders. The questions of co-leadership have circulated in this party for as long as I've been involved, since 2006, when I was elected leader at the 2006 Leadership Convention, and people were saying, what about co-leaders? The co-leadership question came up continually in the 2020 leadership race of this party, in every member forum. So I don't think there was pushback, and I don't think it reflected anything unusual. It's just consensus takes more time than autocracy. Consensus takes time, and listening to everybody and waiting to the moment when people say, I think we've achieved a consensus decision. And then we, in green rules, but believe it or not, there are green rules in our Constitution, at the point that you think you have a consensus, you don't say, okay, now we're putting it to a vote, call the question up, down, that's over. No. Then you say, all right, does anyone oppose this consensus? And then you wait, and you say, if 1 or 2 people in a room of 600 stand up, you say, okay, are you prepared to stand aside so we can say this was a consensus decision? It takes quite a long time, and that's not pushback.
Thank you. And Ms. May, you had mentioned before that you didn't think co-leaders should be elected separately. Now that might be the case since Mr. Pedneault is stepping down. Are you willing to kind of stand back on that and allow that to happen? Or what is your ideal process going to be like before the next general election?
I'm sorry for interrupting by saying no, Mark, but I cannot imagine any system that could possibly work, having talked to my colleagues and friends who are co-leaders around the world. You have to have an intense degree of mutual trust and affection and confidence. So there was one proposal put forward that didn't ever get to a vote because the general meeting that was going to decide it didn't get to vote on it. That's beside the point. But there was one proposal that I couldn't have voted for, which was to say, when you have a leadership race, the top 2 positions, whoever got the largest number of votes and the second largest number of votes are automatically co-leaders. That's not workable. We have to, I'm committed to the models that I see working around the world. And one of my dearest friends in the global green movement, who recently left he left his parliamentary spot, and he also left being a cabinet minister. He was cabinet minister with Jacinda Ardern. But James Shaw from New Zealand, and I asked him, I was really pursuing co-leadership with a lot of colleagues before I made the decision to put my hat in the ring for leader, knowing that I did not want to be like the there were echoes of this in an earlier question. I didn't want to be seen as like that old lady thinks she's the only one who can run the party. No, thank you very much. I wanted to, the bid from the beginning that I thought would work was around co-leadership. So anyway, I was talking to James Shaw about it on the corners of some climate negotiation. I think it was Glasgow. And I said, what are your conclusions about co-leadership? Is it working for you in New Zealand? I asked everyone. He said, it works great. The only thing I've ever seen go really wrong is when co-leaders don't like each other. I mean, it's pretty basic, but you can't have a system that throws people together and then says, okay. So I would not support a system of co-leadership that said people are separately elected and then that doesn't mean that we'll see what happens at the special general meeting. We'll see what model of co-leadership gets accepted or gets rejected. It's a process, and our Green Party system is night and day from the top-down structures that exist in other parties. Top-down structures don't solve all their problems. People are, obviously, Justin Trudeau's looking at a lot of issues where people are saying, pass the torch. At least in co-leadership, you don't have a problem wondering, well, who's that torch going to go to? And that's what I think we need to learn from what happened back in 2019, 2020, when there wasn't an obvious heir apparent as I decided to step away from leadership. So I stepped back into it very committed to co-leadership. I remain committed to co-leadership, and the party's membership will give me guidance when they ultimately decide to accept to change the Constitution or not, and then we'll figure out how we fill a vacancy when it occurs, which has just occurred.
Juliane, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Madame May. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Vous l'avez expliqué en anglais, mais comment vous percevez l'idée d'avoir un co-chef et qu'est-ce que ça veut dire aussi pour la suite des choses, pour votre leadership? Pourquoi vous restez, peut-être, selon vous, est-ce que vous croyez que vous restez la meilleure personne pour être co-chef du Parti vert?
Alors, c'est une bonne question. Pour moi, c'est une question de la volonté de nos membres. Les membres du Parti vert du Canada ont choisi moi-même comme chef il y a moins de 2 ans. Et alors, je pense que j'ai le devoir. Et pour moi, je suis engagée en faveur de l'avenir avec si nous allons avoir un avenir durable. Et cet avenir doit être vert. Ça, c'est la seule chose pour l'humanité et pour notre planète. Alors, moi-même, je reste comme chef avec l'espoir d'avoir les changements vers co-leadership avec les membres, comme nous avons expliqué. J'espère que l'avenir que le Parti vert est prêt pour une nouvelle façon de leadership. Et pour moi, je suis la seule personne avec l'appui de nos membres. Je reste avec l'espoir qu'avant les prochaines élections, c'est tellement triste de parler avec mon collègue ici avec moi parce qu'il est mon meilleur choix, mon rêve comme co-chef. Mais il a fait une décision et je le respecte. Alors pour l'avenir, je reste avec l'espoir pour un autre co-chef. Mais ce n'est pas possible pour moi d'imaginer quelqu'un meilleur.
Vous parlez d'espoir, mais vous avez aussi parlé tout à l'heure de problèmes de structure au Parti vert, la montée de la droite populiste. Depuis que vous êtes chef aussi, là, on a vu, oui, vous avez 2 élus à la Chambre des communes, mais il reste qu'on n'a pas vu une explosion là, du nombre de sièges chez vous. Comment vous vous accrochez à l'espoir encore? Est-ce que vous croyez qu'il y a encore une raison d'être du Parti vert au Canada avec tout ce qu'on voit et tout ce que vous avez vous-même nommé?
Ouais, s'il y a un autre choix, ce sera plus simple. Mais pour moi, comme militant écolo, tous les autres partis sont vides. Seulement les mensonges, les slogans sans politique qui marchent pour protéger notre planète. Je suis comme grand-mère quelqu'un fâché contre tous les autres Il n'y a pas un autre choix. J'espère que, je pense, dans l'époque 2015, je suis absolument, je crois que Justin Trudeau est engagé pour le climat. Et enfin, il a acheté un oléoduc pour la grande croissance des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Je reste quelqu'un, désolé, mais qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Mais faire l'effort, et battre pour une planète, battre pour l'avenir, pour mes petits-enfants. Ça, c'est ça, c'est mon raison d'être.
Rachel, TV?
Thank you. Can you just clarify, you're saying that you're committed to this co-leadership model. Will you be then pitching members to become co-leaders with your other deputy, or how do you see this going forward ahead of the next election?
That's a great question. We have to follow the process we're on. We are on a path. It doesn't change. The resignation of Jonathan Pedneault as one of my two deputy leaders at the moment is, I have to say, heartbreaking. I'm not going to try to pretend otherwise. But the membership will decide what to do around the structure, around leader or co-leader. For the time being, under our Constitution, I'm leader and prepare for an election because that's my responsibility. We are lining up great candidates across the country, and I'm excited for them joining us in Parliament and getting elected. So that's the plan. It doesn't change. If the membership, which is really the leadership of the party, chooses a co-leadership model that doesn't work, that I can't see working, well, that's a hypothetical. But for now, I trust in our membership to pick a model that will work and to leave that space open for us to go into the next election with not just a deputy leader, not that that's a minor position. Under our current Constitution, that's what there is. A leader can choose up to 2 deputy leaders. I'll be seeing whether there's somebody logical that I can bring in as a deputy where we can begin to demonstrate potentially that we work towards co-leadership with that person as well. But the changes to the Constitution, I'm not going to pretend that that I wouldn't have rather things went more quickly, but it does take the time it takes when we're working in a system where general meetings are, at this point, run virtually. I really want us to have a face-to-face convention soon. I don't think it helps. COVID hasn't helped us be able to hold general meetings to bring people together and revitalize, because the preference has been for meetings, and for lots of good reason. It definitely reduces the amount of greenhouse gases of people traveling to conventions. There's much to be said in favor of virtual meetings, but I'll be just very clear. I really want to see us gather in convention and deal with these issues in the way we used to, where when I spoke of a room full of people, it's very different when you're on a Zoom screen than when you're in a room full of people and feel the excitement and the energy in establishing relationships.
So then you don't yet have a date scheduled? You don't know when this special general meeting and all of these questions are going to get resolved? There's no timeline for that yet?
Correct. That's not the prerogative of the leader. In the Green Party of Canada, the leader doesn't, as certainly David Aiken's been around long enough listening to me on this point, the leader is not the boss. The leader is at service of our members. It is a position of servant leadership. And I have to say, boy, what a joy it's been for the last couple of years to be able to share that service with somebody as inspirational as Jonathan Pedneault.
Joe, CTTV?
You said you'd be seeking to add a leader and then potentially elevating them to co-leadership. How is that not auditioning a co-leader with you deciding, kind of contradictory to the idea that the party decides rather than you decide?
The situation that you described is really quite hypothetical, because we don't know what the members will decide, and we don't know when the general meeting will take place, and we don't know when the vote will take place, and we don't know when the next election will be. So working with the existing structure, I'm leader going into the next election. Working on what I hope will take place would look different. And again, the experience of Greens around the world has some bearing here. And another, co-leader of the Scottish Greens, Lorna Slater, has had the same experience, knowing that you're in a close personal relationship. For that matter, the current Minister of Foreign Affairs for Germany and the Minister of Energy and Economy, so Robert Habeck and Annalena Baerbock, went into that election campaign in Germany as co-leaders of the German Green Party. They're both now in cabinet. You don't do that with someone you don't choose yourself, both of you, mutually. Then, of course, the membership, as in the German Greens, confirmed those choices, and you have that's why you have leadership races in co-leadership. That's why they have plans in other Green constitutions for if one co-leader resigns, what do you do? There are a lot of different models out there, and until our members decide, I really can't even begin to puzzle through your question.
David, CBC.
Hi, good morning. My question is for Jonathan Pedneault. As you know, I don't need to tell you this, Jonathan, but the planet's on fire. Like, we've seen 12 consecutive months of record-breaking global temperatures, yet we're here today we're not discussing that. Instead, we're, discussing you stepping down. So I guess my question to you is, has the party lost its way? Do you still believe in this party? Do you still believe in this movement? And how could Canadians not look at today's announcement and just think, I can't look to the Greens to get us out of this climate disaster?
I think the Greens are the only option Canadians have right now. The only option that takes climate seriously, the only option that's been fighting for 40 years now, calling on liberal and conservative governments alike, raising the alarm in the face of the future that they went out and bought for ourselves with our own money, funding this oil and gas industry that's basically burning our future, my future, and the future of so many young Canadians. This party has been consistent and a consistent voice for 40 years in calling government to take the long view and not govern simply on the basis of weekly polls. It's the only party in Canada that has done that. It's the only party in Canada that, until proven otherwise, will continue to do that. And it's an important voice in bringing back the climate discussion at the heart and the environmental discussion at the heart of everything. There is no functioning economy in this country without a healthy environment. Somehow, this gets lost in Parliament. So do I still have hope in Canada and our ability to make the right choices? Absolutely. I think Canadians are enlightened. They have been, as you mentioned, the climate emergency is all over. We see it. We feel it. We choke on it. We see our children suffer from it. Now will be a question, it's going to be a question for Canadians. Do you want to have more Green voices in Parliament? And I hope the answer will be yes.
I just wanted to add, if I may quickly, David, that when I went through the question of, last time I was talking to lots of reporters, was around foreign interference. And I've been pushing really hard and pushing Madam Justice Hogue's commission. Don't just look at foreign governments. Look at transnational corporations. Look at the clout and the power and the lies of the fossil fuel industry for decades that have delayed action. It's costing lives in real time every single day in all parts of the world because we didn't take action when we knew we should, which was 1992. Canada signed a commitment to reduce greenhouse gases before they could reach dangerous levels. Well, it's very dangerous now, and we're near atmospheric tipping points that lead to a future that I won't describe now because it's so horrific and it will sound like scaremongering. But what the hell do we do when, as you say, the planet is on fire? Literal fire and melting and rising sea levels, and the oceans are becoming acidic, and the ocean circulatory currents are shifting. You add to a description of a litany of any one of these single events would have 20 years ago been unthinkable. And they happen all at once, and yet we say, well, axe the tax.
Yeah. If I can add to this, the inequality crisis we're in, the housing crisis we're in, the environmental crisis we're in, all of these crises have been building up for decades under the watch of liberal and liberal and conservative governments alike. Pierre Poilievre has been standing in the House of Commons for 20 years, dismantling the fabric of this country, and he will sadly somehow continue to do this. The Liberals have been standing on stages like these, making promises to people like me and Canadians at home, telling them that they would solve the climate emergency, and they haven't. In fact, we're way worse than we've ever been. And meanwhile, there is this tiny party that for 40 years has been fighting the good fight and has been urging Canada and governments to take the long view when it comes to housing, inequality, and the climate. Right now, we're looking down a barrel. We don't know what's going to happen down south of the border. I wish politicians in Canada would have a discussion around that, because if there is one contingency we need to start planning for, it's also that. I wish we were also having a discussion around what will we do when we end up in a situation where hundreds of thousands of migrants try and enter Canada because we collectively, with our lifestyles, with our industries, with the taxes that we have been funding with our own taxes, this oil and gas industry, what's going to happen with these migrants? Do we let them in? Do we shut down the borders and shoot them down at the border like some? No. But I don't think Canadians want that. I think Canada is a compassionate, enlightened country that wants the best for the future and the rest of the world. But this future, it's playing out now. It's playing out now, just as what we're living in right now, what we're living through right now, played out 20 years ago. And the suffering that we're experiencing right now, the suffering that Canadians are facing at the end of every month, this is not new. This has been in the building up for decades.
And just to follow up, Jonathan, when did you decide that you had enough and you were going to resign? When did you decide that?
It's not about having enough. It's a personal decision, once again, something I don't want to disclose or discuss here. Yeah.
When did you make the decision?
It's been in the process for a few weeks.
Ian Billy, Globe and Mail.
Mr. Pedneault, you've just spoken very eloquently about the climate emergency and the urgency of this issue. So I think people would have to ask, like, why not stay if this is so urgent, if this is so important, if it overwhelms politics? Like you're saying you're not going to discuss your reasons for going, but why go, given the issues you've just passionately outlined?
I'll just emphasize that I'm not leaving politics. Politics is everywhere. At every kitchen table, it's at every boardroom, it's in every job. You guys, whether you accept it or not, are also a part of this political discussion. Politics in today's day and age involves us all. We're all taking decisions on a regular basis that have an impact on the future of the world. I'm going to continue to do that in a private capacity. I can only encourage young people to get involved in politics. Once again, this has been the honor of a lifetime. I'm not going to discuss the reasons as to why I'm leaving today. That is for me, and this is a discussion I've had with Elizabeth. But now, the important thing here, again, to re-emphasize, is that there are options out here in Canada in 2024. If people want to see bold action on the social front, on the climate front, there are options, and I can only encourage Canadians to look at them and get involved.
Will you stay involved in the Green Party as a private citizen? Will you knock on doors or in the next election, or are you done and gone?
Depend on the job opportunities I get afterwards. I've, as you know, I've been working for 14 years in conflict areas. This has been my turf for many years. It's very likely that I will return to that turf. Very difficult to knock on doors in Canada while I'm abroad dodging bullets, but one way or another, I remain committed to the Greens.
Are you taking on a new job?
That's that may well be down the road, but that's not the case. No.
Stephanie, Canadian Press.
Hi there. Jonathan, can you just clarify, was the delays Ms. May talked about in terms of getting this co-leadership model actually passed, was that a factor in your decision to resign today?
These delays took place because we are having important discussions about the future of this party. This is a member-led party. It's normal that it takes time. It is not related to my departing today.
May I just say, look, they're all understandable. Like, we delayed a critical council meeting a general meeting for all of our members, when we realized that the by-election, which was provincial, in Kitchener Centre, would take a lot of critical volunteers away from knocking on doors in Kitchener Centre. And the Riding Association, now Electoral District Association of Kitchener Centre, asked the federal council, would you postpone the general meeting because we think it's going to be really close and we need everybody knocking on doors. It turned out it wasn't really close, by the way. Ashland Clancy, doubling the Green Party caucus at Queen's Park, got more votes than the combined votes of the Conservative, Liberals, and New Democrats in Kitchener Centre in that provincial by-election November 30th. But we thought it was going to be really close. So a unanimous vote of our federal council supported a request from the Electoral District Association of Kitchener Centre. I picked that out as just one example because when we say delays, one could imagine all kinds of, deliberate delays, foot dragging. I voted for, we better make sure that we don't take a single person away from door knocking in Kitchener Centre if it's going to be that close. It was a landslide for Ashland Clancy, Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Ontario. I'm not going to lament what is or isn't in the newspaper because I think the best line I ever heard from any politician about that was when Paul Martin said a politician who complains about media is like a sailor who complains about the sea. I don't think I saw a single story that said what I just said. Ashland Clancy won by a landslide that no one saw coming in Kitchener Centre. But that was a really big delay in the decision-making and letting the members of the Green Party of Canada have their say on what they want. And that's a process that has taken a lot longer for lots of disparate and understandable reasons.
Ms. May, how are you feeling? You're looking down the barrel of an election. You might be going into it alone. You can't get your party members aren't even in the same room to talk about this. You say you're heartbroken.
Yeah.
Are you up for really doing another campaign with candidates across the country? How are you feeling?
Well, I can't tell you how blessed I feel. I'm 70 years old. A year ago, June 29th, not to put too much of a somber tone on it, but I'm so lucky to be alive. I had a hemorrhagic stroke that my doctor, I didn't have a doctor, so my husband calls it a stroke of luck because I hadn't had a family doctor for 8 years, and thanks to having a stroke, I got a doctor. I'm in remarkably good health. I am working longer hours than most people half my age could handle. I'm not trying to push my luck or set any new world records, but I've been crisscrossing the country with Jonathan and recently doing tours in parts of the country that are expecting what we know. We have 3 provinces with provincial elections this fall. I'm offering myself and campaign help to all of those provincial Greens and their candidates so that they will do as well as they possibly can. Again, just as Ashland Clancy's win in Kitchener Centre makes it very clear that the voters of Kitchener Centre are so grateful for the hard work of Mike Morris. We are never and never have been a party of one, that's for sure. But more than that, am I ready? Sure, of course. I would be much, much happier if I was doing this with Jonathan, because that was our plan all along. I wouldn't have run for leadership if we hadn't met. So yeah, it's both heartbroken, but what do you do? The stakes are really big here. And I've got another grandbaby coming at the end of October. And I feel very, very committed, as I think everybody my age should. Baby boomers have fucked this planet, and we can't walk away and leave it for our kids to fix it. And I'm sorry I just used the F word out loud, but I think kids understand what I'm saying. I'm a 70-year-old, angry, cranky version of Greta Thunberg. And am I ready? You bet.
Je ne vois pas de questions sur le Zoom. Je vais utiliser mon privilège de modérateur pour poser une petite question. Monsieur Pedneault, si vous aviez été élu à NDG Westmount en 2023, est-ce que vous auriez quand même présenté votre démission et quitté votre siège en ce moment?
Ben, c'est évident qu'on ne quitte pas, une fois qu'on est élu à la Chambre des communes, on ne peut pas quitter, si facilement. C'est une question de confiance que les électeurs au complet d'une circonscription donne, mais c'est certain que les conditions actuelles, puis encore une fois, je ne rentrerai pas dans les détails, mais rendre ma décision aujourd'hui inévitable.
Merci. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions. Oui, David Durton.
I'm going to give my final question to Madam May. I just wanted to ask you, I guess, why not cede the leadership to someone new for the benefit of the party? Why are you the best person to lead the Greens?
Well, we just had a leadership race recently. The members asked me and voted their confidence in me to be leader and work towards a co-leader model. That's still the mandate I have. And David, while you've given me the mic again, I meant to say something earlier because I think it's important to reach out across party lines. And when one of my colleagues does something right and obvious, I just wanted to say to Michelle Ferreri, good on you. There's no room for transphobe hate in this world. And I think it's horrible that she faced blowback for saying the obvious thing, that the Peterborough police did the right thing in pursuing an arrest. And that hatred, which we see in many different forms and shapes right now, be it anti-Semitism, which is on the rise in Canada, Islamophobia, trans hate. I sometimes think, and there's no way that I know how to do this, that the politicians who benefit from the algorithms and the clickbait of rage farming, I don't know how to do it, but what I want to do is love farming. I want to find a way that gives people a chance and a hope and a sense of, I love this country. I love my neighbors. I love my community. Where did all this hate come from? I think Justin Trudeau is a very, very large disappointment. But is it right that we have social media algorithms that want to generate a completely inappropriate ad hominem hatred against an individual that I've never seen against a prime minister before? I've seen unpopular prime ministers, but this isn't right. It's not Canadian. So I'm dedicated to this country. I'm dedicated to the life forms on this one and only green and blue planet in an otherwise dead space.
Well, why not give someone else the chance? Here you have someone who could have had the chance and is now stepping aside.
I'm not prepared to accept the idea that we'd be better off with a big question mark. Leadership races are expensive. We don't know that, and this is what I experienced, and you were here. We had a leadership race. We had what I thought was going to be an excellent choice. It's look, the Conservative Party, it's just the Greens. Succession within political parties is difficult. After Stephen Harper's defeat in 2015, in short succession, Andrew Scheer, and then Erin O'Toole, and then Pierre Poilievre, it isn't good to have a system where the choices are quick and abrupt and expensive within any political party. I think Justin Trudeau should pass the torch. People should figure out how to talk to him about it so he can stand on the things that he accomplished that he'd promised to do. And I wished he did a lot of the Green Party policies he accomplished. I just wish that the fact that we were the first party to call for legalizing cannabis and for medical assistance in dying, I think it would have been really much more important to assure that we don't go into runaway global warming from out-of-control greenhouse gas emissions funded by the federal coffers. If I could have advised him on which one of our policies should have been a bigger priority than the others, but parties should be able to pass the torch. I've done that in the past, and with the vagaries of leadership races and how long they take and the potential of a snap election, I'm not going to do that to the party. They've specifically asked me not to leave and to continue and work as leader going into the next election.
Ceci conclut cette conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup à tous les participants.
Merci beaucoup. Thank
Merci.
you. Merci.